Okay, we are live. It is the day after Christmas, December 26th, and it is 1:40 in the afternoon. I'm supposed to be outside doing other things. My solar is currently pulling down 2.12 kilowatts on a cloudy day, and I'll take it. I'll take it. So, what to talk about? Last video, a few days ago, last weekend, I talked about the coming AI apocalypse. Um, Generally, on these channels, I talk about global heating, but I'm not a one-dimensional person. I have lots of interests. I have a long career in technology. I don't talk about it here at all because I'm now retired. It paid the bills, but I did learn a lot. And so when AI came along, I looked upon that with some interest. My real education is in systems biology, and I'll get to the topic here in a moment, which is village life. But um, it's useful to reflect on these things, my own trajectory in all of this, how I got here, and why I'm here, and why I'm talking about AI today. So my own background is in systems biology. I have formal education in data analysis, data collection, uh, interpretations of data, uh, modeling, which is kind of a dirty word in some circles, but I did a certain amount of it, and it was useful. And it was my work as a computational biologist, which might even be a field now. When I was doing that work, which was 40 years ago, when I was doing that work, there really wasn't such a field. There wasn't really even a field of computer science. It had just started, and it was the domain of a lot of people, dealing with computer architectures and programming languages and the nuts and bolts, if you rather, of computers. You'd almost say the blue collar side of computers, and there were increasing number of people using computers to do research in other fields, and I was doing research using computers in biology, systems biology. Systems analysis in biology was uh, used to be something you did by hand, and it involved pressing plants and collecting, preserving butterflies and insects and having all these collections, and then we got into ecology, and that started making us wonder about the interactions between things. I'll get to village life in a minute. The interactions between things, how who's eating who's parasitizing somebody else, what animals are dependent on each other, and which just don't seem to have any interactions at all. And then, of course, you get to the idea of, well, what is key? What is key to an ecological system? And then you had keystone species and key important energy pathways, based on trophic levels, who was eating whom. And that was really, really hard work to do by just collecting butterflies and collecting flowers and pressing them in a book. You had to do you had to watch things, or you had to notice who's eating who and how much, the abundance of things, and where is the energy moving through the system. And that required a lot of data, collecting data. And sometimes people would collect data for decades on things that didn't even seem important. And people were wondering, why are you collecting data on that? And turns out later, it could be data used in a more systemic approach. So that's how I came to computers. And it's important because systematics and understanding how the properties of large ensembles of individual actors, how the properties of that community emerge from the activities and interactions of the individuals. You don't get that by putting a needle in a beetle and putting it in a box. You don't get that. But when you look at everything in the system, and you look at all the interactions between all the actors and and who's eating who, and what are their migratory patterns, and how are they interacting, and what trophic levels are they interacting at, And do those interactions change during the course of the year or during the course of a decade or a century? Okay. When you start looking at the systematics of ecosystems, and then you see these properties emerge, emergent properties. And you really only get that through computers. So it's not surprising that to us system workers, it wasn't surprising at all when computers themselves began to evidence emergent properties. And one of the emergent properties that people began talking about, like in the 40s, 50s, Alan Turing was having thoughts about this back in the day. Just thoughts like maybe could, might, also possibly could. Uh, the the possibility that these computational machines, which can clearly perform acts of numerical analysis, right? The humans way beyond human skill. That from the basis of numerical, uh, uh, exploitation, that they could rise in a property that would emerge from what they're doing, either individually or collectively. What all the parts are doing, something might emerge from that system that might look to us at some point like intelligence. Uh, if you're not a computer scientist and you're not a system biologist, or if you're not a physicist and you're dealing with very, very large questions and very, very large collections of data, then you might not think like that. You might think, well, a computer is like a telephone, right? I pick up the phone and I make a phone call and I put the phone down, I'm done with it. And a computer, you turn the computer on, you play around on the internet, you do some calculations in a spreadsheet, then you turn it off, right? You don't see it as having emergent properties. And your desktop computer, up until recently, didn't. But now, because of research, they are discovering that when computers are programmed in a certain way, something that emerges from that is a system that evidences behaviors that we could call or confuse with artificial intelligence. So in my last video, so that's how I come to this. That's how I come to this. It's important to know how I come to this, because I'm going to take my systems orientation, my capacity to analyze systems as collections of actors, as a whole system. And all these actors interacting, and past behaviors are probably going to indicate future behaviors. And some actors are creators, and some actors are destroyers, and some are consumers, and some are producers. And all these things interacting is going to be, something new in the future. That's my orientation. That's how I come to this. So when I was watching the AI thing play out and people were kind of uh, panicking, I think that's the best word for it. And that's a thing. That's not make believe. That's not Chicken Little. They're panicking. When the AI researchers just started to panic, I started paying attention, because I know what's out there. It's lurking, which is properties emerging from collections of actors. And as I have one problem these days, which is global heating, I was watching this other thing, which people are saying, oh, this is an existential threat. We need to deal with this. We need legislation. We need it fast. We need regulation. We need that fast. And the people who are running the labs doing this AI research, they were the ones going to the politicians and saying, regulate us, please do something, put an end to this, because they can't do it. They can't do it because why? Because they're all excited and they want to go forward, and they want everyone wants it to stop, but no individual wants it to stop. So it's just like when cars were polluting and they were filling cities with pollution, they realized that their product was going to be banned. If it's only banned from city centers, that's still a ban, right? That's a problem. And so it was the auto industry that went to the government and said, regulate us, make us stop doing this. And you'll be thinking, why? Why don't you just stop on your own, make better cars, clean up your emissions, whatever. But they didn't want to do that. They wanted everyone to be forced to do it at once. That's just how the corporate mentality works. Nobody wants to go first because there's expenses and there's research and there's, they wanted help from the government. They wanted the government to pour money into research on pollution controls coming from cars and other types of engines. And they wanted the government to pay for it. They wanted the government to pay for the regulations. They wanted the government to come up with new departments of regulation. They wanted inspections. They wanted patents to be shared. They wanted research, and they didn't want to do these things themselves. Oh, and they didn't want to do it themselves for everyone else to benefit from, or for the one company never to implement and cheat and make more money because they're not implementing emission control. So the auto industry went to the government and said, regulate us, please. And it happened. And it wouldn't have happened if they hadn't gone and said, regulate us, please. And the fact that the AI researchers are going to the governments, their hair on fire, saying, regulate us, please. That's all you need to know. They wouldn't be asking for it. They wouldn't be pleading for it. They wouldn't be on YouTube complaining about it if it wasn't necessary. They want to be regulated. They want to be stopped. Some of them will tell you, we want a moratorium. We want this to stop. I'm not going to stop because those other guys aren't going to stop either. And that other country isn't going to stop. I'm not going to stop. There's a lot of money to be made here. First mover advantage is going to be trillions of dollars in profits. So I'm not going to stop. Maybe I'll be the first mover, but we all need to stop. And if that sounds contradictory, well, they have split brain, right? On the one hand, they're a corporation. They're trying to make profits. They're trying to attract investors. And on the other hand, they're humans and they got families and they don't want the world to be destroyed from the work they're doing. And so when they have a busy day at work and they have all this innovation and all this progress and all these breakthroughs, and they go home and talk to their wife, and the wife says, so how'd it go at work? Well, then they put on their other hat, right? And the children are there playing on the carpet, and the dog is sleeping in the corner, and wife just came home from work, and you're planning your first meal, your meal of the evening, and she's asked you a question, how'd it go at work? And you could say, oh, it went fine. Or you could say, man, I just did some stuff that's going to destroy the world at work today. I may have destroyed the world. I wrote some code, got an amazing result. Don't know what happened. Don't know how that happened. And yeah, I may have destroyed the world. If this ever gets out, we're done. I won't even have a job. You won't have a job. The kids, I don't know what are the kids going to do? And we probably end up eating the dog. I mean, seriously, what did I do today? You're asking me what I did today? I don't know. Maybe I destroyed the world. That's the kind of conversations they're having. I know they are, because they're panicking. They're in a panic. I saw one estimate based on decent data, a decent analysis of available data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the US. Decent analysis. I didn't see anything out of hand. It is like nothing extreme. I'm like, yeah, sure, those are good assumptions. Yeah, that's a fair assumption to make. Sure, you can do that. You can divide by that and multiply by that. Yeah, I see that. I see why you're doing that. And 82% unemployment. Oh, really? Wow. Okay. You showed me your work and you got to 82% unemployment. All that was the last video, but I had to recap because what I'm about to say will make no sense at all if you don't have that foundationally in the back of your head. It's the end of the world as we know it. And it's either going to end because of global heating, which mitigates against any further consumption of fossil fuels, which is the end of the world as we know it, or we just keep going ahead. We keep innovating. We keep using fossil fuels to build more and move more and faster and better and cheaper, and then artificial intelligence lands on our lap, and that ends the world as we know it. And in my last video, I was like, well, that could be that might actually help us. The AI revolution and the 82% unemployment projection might save us from global heating. Why is that? Because if 8 out of 10 people are unemployed, they're not driving, flying, Amazon Prime. They don't have any money and they don't have a job. Which is also what it looks like if someone magically somehow turns off the fossil fuels. If someone ever turns off the fossil fuels, the next day you go outside, the sun is up, and they ended the fossil fuels, and it's been 2 weeks or a month or something since then. And what you'll see outside in front of your home or out in your world and in your skies overhead. And what you'll read in the newspaper, if you get one still, is that there's no driving, there's no flying, there's no movement of goods. Haven't seen an 18-wheeler anywhere for any reason. There's no movement of money. I haven't had a paycheck in 2 weeks, and there's no jobs. I haven't been to work in 4 weeks. I mean, that's what happens. I don't know the exact timing of how they shut off the fossil fuels, when they do it, how they do it. Maybe they use war. Maybe they just use price signals. I don't know. I mean, if gasoline is $30 a gallon, there might as well not be any, right? So maybe someone conspires, or for whatever reason, market reasons, profitability, whatever, they decide to either shut it off or shut most of it off and charge a king's ransom for the rest of it. And that's the end. That's the end of your world as you have known it. All right. And if you were on the cruise ship Titanic on its maiden voyage, and you were going to New York and you were enjoying the cruise, and the food is great, and the dancing and the music, and this is nice, and I've met some new people, and we're gonna get off this ship in New York and spend some time together as tourists in New York before we go our separate ways, and these are all your plans, and then you hit the iceberg. You hit the iceberg in the North Atlantic, the freezing North Atlantic, and that's the end of your world as you know it. All your plans, all your expectations just stopped. And for some people, they stopped forever. And your existence ended in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. And for a few other people, they survived. And they had a different life after that. Maybe it was in New York, maybe it was somewhere else. Maybe they lost friends, maybe they lost family. Who knows? And, their life was never the same after that. For most of them, for some, maybe it made no difference at all. And they got off in some harbor in the U.S. in America, and ended up going someplace else. It didn't matter. But for a lot of people, that was the end of the world as they knew it, and as they had any reason to expect it to be. And global heating and the current course we're on is the end of the world as you know it. Your world has no future. I don't know when it ends. Just like when the Titanic struck the iceberg, people didn't know how much time they had. How fast can a ship sink? Does it take days? Can we just keep going and go to New York and sink in the harbor? How does this work? And they didn't know. And right now, with the rise of AI, we kind of don't know. How long do we have? Some people say we have a few years. Some people say we have 5 or 10. That's still the end of your world. That's the end of your world. I mean, if someone told you that aliens were coming to Earth and we saw them on radar and we knew they were going to be here in 2 years, your world would end right there on the spot. You just have no future, or you have to come up with a different future. Are we going to fight them? Are we going to live underground? Are we going to welcome them with an outstretched hand of peace and friendship? Do we have to raise our armies and our navies to be prepared to fight them, or are we just going to sit back and just see what happens? Because those are your choices, and those choices. Listen, those choices on what's going to happen to what the next anything of your life is going to be, days, months, years, decades, whatever's left to you, it is determined as soon as you know that there is an alien spaceship flotilla coming for Earth. And if we don't have that happening, your life as you know it ends when someone says most jobs, 8 out of 10, are going to vanish. Or, stated a different way, enough jobs will vanish and be taken over by artificial intelligence such that 80% of people will be unemployed. As soon as that is revealed to you, and you can say, I don't believe it, and just go about your life. But that would be dumb. As soon as someone says that 8 out of 10 of the people in this room, including, since this is a press conference, all of you reporters, every one of you will be out of a job in 2 years. All the reporters and 8 out of 10 of everyone else will be out of a job in 2 to 3 years. As soon as someone says that, I mean, you may want to ask some clarifying questions. Excuse me, how did you come to that conclusion? Could I see your data? Are you going to publish this as a result? Is this peer reviewed? Has the U.S. government and the UN weighed in on this? Do they agree with this assessment? Do any other governments agree with this assessment? Has anyone else done this work besides you? You're giving a press conference, you're announcing this, but and after a few days, after running down some leads and looking up some facts and trying to figure this out, you come to the conclusion after a couple of days that, oh yeah, they're right. Wow. Really? And we're developing this artificial intelligence and it's going to put 8 out of 10 of us out of work? Really? Wow. Okay. Who green lighted this project? Seriously, I'm just asking. I'm a concerned person. I'm a reporter, and I'm writing this article, and I'm not now. I'm going to 2 paragraphs into it. I'm asking who green lighted this. What? And we're still doing it. We're still doing this research. On the one hand, you're telling us that 8 out of 10 of us are going to be out of work, and on the other side, you're announcing all the progress on your AI research, and you're crowing about it, and the investors are flocking to your company and investing billions of dollars to continue this, and the regulators are saying, "Oh yeah, please do," and the politicians are saying, "Oh yeah, please do. Can I have my money?" And we have two completely different scenarios, narratives going on around this. And the one I keep hearing is 8 out of 10 of us are going to be out of a job. And who gave the green light to this? And why aren't we stopping this? That's going to be the questions people are asking. And if that press conference happened today, Intel or Google or Meta or somebody came out and did a press conference, a presser, and they had a bunch of reporters, and they said, "Yep, we've got it. It's sitting in our lab right now. It's chugging along. It's amazing us. In fact, we had several programmers commit suicide yesterday, and we are now we realize that we have to reveal this. The world has a decision to make, and if that happened, your life as you know it is done, done, including if you're a programmer. And if that doesn't get to you and end your life as you know it, global heating is going to end your life as you know it, because they're going to have to cut off the fossil fuels. And in my last video, I said, look what happens. If 8 out of 10 people lose their jobs, well, the fossil fuel problem just kind of solves itself, doesn't it? Because with 8 out of 10 people not working, that's 8 out of 10 people that don't have money. And if you don't have money, that little token that you have to use for exchange, and they got that controlled. And if you don't have the money and you don't have the token, then you can't buy the bread, and you can't buy the gas, and you can't, look for a job or whatever else. And so fuel consumption drops through the floor for the part of it that is people working, right? But also, you're not ordering your Amazon Prime. I mean, if you just lost your job to AI or something similar, or you lost your job to the cost of fossil fuels going through the roof, then you're not participating in the global economy. And if you're a person living in America, then you basically are the global economy. All right. And if you are the global economy and 8 out of 10 of you are not participating, then the global economy goes through a massive contraction. And when it does, then it doesn't matter that there is still 2 in 10 people who could do the Amazon Prime and go to the ball game and go to Disneyland and fly to Europe and go out and have a vacation in the Maldives. It doesn't matter that 2 out of 10 people can do that, because the global economy isn't supported by 2 out of 10 people, except that they are the richest 2 out of 10 people. And what AI is going to do to us, and what an end of fossil fuels is going to do to us, is put out of work the people who are the richest. Because poor people were never dependent on fossil fuels to exist, except to the extent that modern agriculture based on fossil fuels created enough surplus food that people who are no longer able to create food for themselves could still eat and could still have children and could still contribute to the global population. Uh, and but when 8 out of 10 of the people who invented and greased the wheels of the global economy lose their jobs, then the global economy, where does that go? probably right down the toilet, right? Yeah, there's a lot of ironies here. There's a lot of ironies. And and the irony for me is now that AI is here and now that I understand exactly what's happening with that and I know exactly where it came from and I know they are not going to stop it and it is going to impact people's careers. Period. It is going to impact their careers in a terminal fashion, since I know these things to be true, and they know these things to be true, and they are begging to be regulated. They are begging to be stopped. And since all of this is true, it's the end of the world as we know it. It doesn't even matter which gets to us first. The end of fossil fuels certainly ends the world and can end it abruptly, like within 100 days. How many reserves do we have? How much food do you have in your pantry? How much food is on the market? How much food is in the warehouse for the market? Okay, well, what do you get? 100 days? You scrounge around for a couple of weeks after that, and then you're done, right? Or artificial intelligence shows up everywhere all at once, all at the same time, pretty much like within a year. The first instance is over here, and then the last instance is over there, and then the economy collapses, right? That's your bookend. You got, you know, 300 days from the first instance showing up in one industrial sector to the nth instance showing up in the next industrial sector, you know, 300 days down the road. And now there's enough industrial sectors that have been automated and enough people have been thrown out of their jobs that the global economy implodes. So when does it start? I don't know. Next week. That's my answer to everything. We have so much uncertainty now in events that, anyone ever asks me. My wife asked me, so when do you think that we cross, 2.0 degrees C above baseline next week? Hmm. Okay, well, yeah, I understand. We don't know. So guess low, guess immediately, guess next week. So when does AI start throwing people out of their jobs? Next week. Who are those people going to be? Coders, lawyers, teachers, right? Middle managers, CEOs. Who needs a CEO when you have an AI that can run a company? Why pay these people $10 million a year to sit there on their butt and pretend that they know how to run a company? You know, CEOs put companies in the grave all the time. Why do that? Why let them do that? Run it with a computer. It's all about computers anyway, right? It's all about data. Run it with a computer. Everybody, 82% by one estimate. My estimate is 100% because once the economy collapses, we're all dependent on that. We're all dependent on fossil fuels. Once the economy collapses, there's no reason to pump fossil fuels, right? They just turn those pumps off. They fill the reservoirs first, the strategic reservoirs and the tank farms and everything else. They fill all that up. They fill up all the tankers, and still no customers. Wow. Okay, so everything's full. The tankers are full. The onshore tanks are full. The pipelines are full. The strategic petroleum reserve is full, and there's no one else to sell petroleum to. Oh, okay, I guess we got to turn off the pumps. Who would have thought that day would ever come? And why is this happening? Well, because the global economy imploded. And whether it imploded because of, cutting off fossil fuels due to global heating or because everyone lost their jobs due to AI, it just doesn't really matter, does it? It's the same outcome. All by way of saying that your Titanic has hit two icebergs, one over here and one over there. And maybe it hit this one first and then it hit this one 5 minutes later. It doesn't matter. Both of them can sink the ship. Together, who even knows what can happen to the ship? The ship might just turn upside down, right? We've been hit twice by icebergs. Can we even get off this ship? Is this ship even going to last long enough to get off of it? Well, if you are going to get off your Titanic that has hit the global heating iceberg on this side and the AI iceberg on that other side, if you are going to get off the ship, which I think you're going to have to do, what does that look like? Well, it looks like a lifeboat. Okay. But these are metaphors now. We're talking about metaphorical Titanics and metaphorical lifeboats. So what is a practical implementation of a lifeboat in our current situation? And it took me a while to figure this out. But a few years ago, I realized that, yes, we have to be practical about this. I began thinking about, well, what does it look like to get off this Titanic? This thing is going to sink. It's already sinking. It's going down. And people are still talking about the rate of sinking and how much water is coming in and, when it will sink and what it will look like when it sinks and how far will it take for it to hit the bottom of the North Atlantic. And I've given up on this. Like, people, shut up. Just shut up for a minute and listen to what you've been saying. Just shut up for a minute and listen to yourself talk. You keep saying that this is bad and that we have to change. Okay. And what do? You get to a lifeboat. And what does that mean in practical terms? So stop talking about global heating. We should even stop talking about AI. Okay, there it is. Huh, iceberg off the port bow. Well, now we're screwed. Okay. Now let's not talk about the iceberg anymore. Can't steer away from it. We hit it where it's going to hit it, and it could hit it tomorrow, next week. Could hit it next week. So what are we going to do? And what I've come up with is what I'm calling village life. Now, you might think that means going back to what? The Middle Ages, if you're European or European extraction, the Black Death, the Dark Ages, no one could read or write. People ate filth, right? Diseases killed 7 out of 10 children. Okay, you could think about the middle of the Black Death and all that. And not that that was a worldwide phenomenon, by the way. The Chinese didn't have a Black Death, I don't think. And they didn't have the problems that we were having in Europe at the same time. So yeah, there could be islands of stability, islands of sanity, but let's just say that now that it's a global thing, we're all in this boat together, happy called the Titanic. We have to go back to village life. I mean, that's how we got here, right? That's how we got all this. All this somehow came from village life. It just did. As a matter of fact, I heard a long time ago, and I thought it was just the most wonderful thing I ever heard. It's worth repeating. All of this, including the moon landings, came from stone tools. All of this was somehow embodied in stone tools. And the domestication of fire, and then later the domestication of animals and domestication of plants, and then later on settlements, and then later on Mesopotamia, and then later on emerging civilizations, and then the fall of civilizations and civilizations emerging from that, and the domestication of metals and mining techniques got improved, and pretty soon we had steam, and pretty soon we had, right, it all came from stone tools. How? I don't know, I wasn't there, but that's what happened. Somehow embodied in stone tools was all this. And on the way from stone tools to all of this, okay, 20,000 years, through that unbroken chain of people doing what people like to do and want to do and need to do, that unbroken chain, all the way to this. Along the way was village life. Now, we can have, oh yeah. So this is when I come a techno-utopian or a hopeless optimist or whatever you want to say. No. I am a data scientist. I am a system scientist. I understand systems. I understand how things come together. I understand how properties emerge. I understand how the parts of complex systems interact, how they gear, and things emerge from the gearing. I understand that. I'm going to talk about village life as an emergent property of all this. A future village life that is an emergent property of the collision between the two icebergs that are actually sinking our Titanic. We are going to take the wreckage of this Titanic and the collision with this iceberg, and we're going to take these and we're going to wrestle with this. And we are going to emerge on the other side into a construct, an emergent construct that I call, for lack of a better term, village life. What is village life? I'll start with the five horsemen of the apocalypse, okay? Village life. What does it look like? It looks like, roll me, keep with me on this, okay? Just roll with it. The five horsemen of the apocalypse, they look like no driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no movement of money, and no jobs. And now you're thinking, mind blown, this guy's insane. This guy's insane. How am I going to survive without my car and my fuel? And the fuel has to be cheap and affordable. And my car has to be comfortable. Heated seats are really necessary where I live. And I need all these things. And because I work so hard, I have two jobs. I got a side job and I got a main job. And I could be unemployed from either one of them with the stroke of a pen. And therefore, because of that, I need Disneyland. And how am I supposed to survive if I don't have driving and flying? Okay. What's your answer? Fix that for me, genius. Pinhead, fix that for me. I need these things. Okay. Well, you're not going to have them. What do you need? Yeah, you have needs. I agree. I'll grant you that. You have needs. Let's start with the basic needs. Let's start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, shall we? Your needs are. I wish I had it written down in front of me. I could look it up, but I'm not going to. I'm going to wing it. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first tier on the hierarchy of needs. And people reinterpret the hierarchy of needs all the time. So if I come up with my own hierarchy of needs, and so be it. Food, clothing, and shelter. That's at the bottom. The bottom part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is food, clothing, and shelter. You need that. You need that. You need clothing because you don't have fur. Pretty simple, okay? Somehow humans don't have fur. I mean, I know why humans don't have fur. It's called paedomorphosis. But in any case, humans don't have fur. All right, so humans have sparse fur, and therefore we need clothing, but we always needed food. And, because we're not, muscular predators who can defend ourselves against all challengers, we need shelter. And that generally extends to shelter for our domesticated animals and our domesticated crops that we harvest and have to store in silos, which is a kind of shelter for food, right? We have to get all these things working. And that's the base of the pyramid of the hierarchy of needs. And along the way, you need things that start to look like community. And community is literally one of those. You need people, you need to be surrounded with people that you know and that you suspect will be able to support you. But you also need meaning, right? You need what? Some people find meaning in labor. Some people find meaning in raising children. Some people find meaning in leadership. Some people find meaning in innovation and invention, right? It takes all types, and you find meaning, purpose in all these different ways. And because there's so many people doing so many different things and finding meaning in the process, you end up with, what we have. All of this, as I like to say, all this. Okay. Because of all these different modalities. And, beyond things like meaning and purpose, you also need recognition that you're a part of something and that people appreciate you and people like you and they say nice things about you, and that gives you a sense of belonging to something that's bigger than you. So this thing that's emerging that's bigger than you, or bigger than them and them and them and them and them, it's us. It's what we call us. Now, of course, sometimes there's also a them. There's those other us's over there that we don't really trust or know what they're doing and what are their intentions. But for our purposes, us is the people that you're with. And you may have heard of the Dunbar number, that you need to have 200 to 500 people that you really trust and that really trust you and that appreciate you and understand what you're about and can tell other people what you're about, and people come to you for support when they need support, and then you can go to them. And 200 to 500 people is enough. And 200 500 people is a small town or a village, a large village or a small town. And so, since these are the things you need, and everything beyond that is sort of psychobabble, right? Politics, religion. You don't need religion. Maybe we need some kind of a framework that helps us understand the unknowable, right? Life after death, birth, even, where does life come from? Here's a little child. I'm holding this child. Wow, I'm having this moment of awe. Here, this is this new person, and this woman just delivered this new person. What's up with her? Right? How does she do that? She's over there smiling and she's happy, and she's not asking any existential questions like where did this little peanut, this little pink peanut come from? She's just enjoying her life over there, and I'm holding this little thing, and someone's telling me that's my child. Wow, awe, inspiring. What do I think about that? Okay, so maybe we still need those moments. We need someone to come along and say, well, that's the what you're feeling is, and that's the voice of, and you are part of and we all are in the great scheme of the whatever, and maybe those are your answers. And I'll admit, science doesn't have all the answers. I mean, they're not nice ones. I can tell you where a baby comes from. I can talk about pregnancy and gestation and cellular differentiation and organ development and even birth, right? All the hormones and what causes lactation and where the contractions come from and blah, blah, blah. Right? We know all those things. It's not very inspiring, kind of gross. Or it could be, yes, the great spirit and, the father of life is transferred into the body, and we are surrounded by life, and the spirit is brought into the inanimate matter and the spark of life. And that, wow, that's kind of cool, isn't it? Maybe we still need that. So village life. Somewhere in your village, maybe as a spiritualist, an elder or somebody who's been designated, and they help you deal with the awe-inspiring awesomeness of all the awe, right? So how do we get? It's not going back, and I don't want to say how do we get back to village life, because we're not going back. Boy, to some extent, it would be a sweet deal if we could just give up fossil fuels and turn off the AI and do all that and just go back to village life. That would be a real hack. But no, we're not doing that. For one thing, the earth has changed. You don't know that. You don't think that. You haven't seen that. It's not happening in your neighborhood. Well, where do you think all that asphalt came from? Where did all that concrete come from? What about those cars? And what about those pollutants? And how many wetlands got paved over for that shopping center down the way? And how many animals have been driven out of your urban area, or how many animals have been driven extinct? The California state flag has a golden bear on it. You ever seen a golden bear? Do you know what a golden bear is? Is there a golden bear? People ask that question still. What happened to the golden bear? There isn't one. Yeah, we did this. We changed the world. We did that. You don't have to believe it. You can think I'm nuts. Humans are so puny. How could they change the world? Well, we did. Yes, we did. And we wouldn't be a decade into the sixth mass extinction if we hadn't. It's no accident that the sixth mass extinction happened on our watch. Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, we did that. How did we do that? Oh, well, habitat loss, the influence of pesticides and fertilizers, draining wetlands and converting them into, shopping centers with asphalt, and overeating all the animals, and, destroying food chains and disrupting ecosystems. And yeah, we did that. No, we did that. We did that. It wasn't a meteorite. I'm pretty sure we would have, if there had been a meteor, I'm pretty sure we would have noticed. If there had been some super predator fly in from Venus, I think we probably would have noticed. No, the super predator that flew in and did all this was us. So we're not going back. No, we are not going back. There's nothing to go back to. Yes, that would be nice if there was something to go back to. We're not going back. We're either going forward or we're going down with the ship. We're either going forward or we're going down with the ship. Now, what does going forward look like? Village life. Now, if I was to take all of my technology, all of this, as I like to say, right? All of this, the internet, the Wi-Fi, penicillin, Wikipedia. If I was going to, and LED lighting and light manufacturing, even some heavy manufacturing, right? Who's going to manufacture the solar panels? If we're going to take any of this forward, which I think we must because we can't go back. Oh, no. That would be nice. That would be sweet. I could just say, oh, we're just going to go back. Well, whatever. We'll make the best of it. Well, there's no going back. We have to go forward. And because we are dependent on artificial habitat, including electricity and fresh water piped into my home and sewer piped out of my home, or someplace where it can be safely disposed of, because we're dependent on all this, even if you don't know you're dependent on all this, you are dependent on all this. You're like a tiger living in the zoo in his grotto where his food is brought to him and his water is brought to him and his penicillin is brought to him, and he's completely taken care of. No predator can get to him, and people are kept at a distance. And we're like that. We live in an artificial habitat, and God forbid that the animal handler stop taking care of the tiger in his grotto. What's he going to do? And heaven forbid that all of this stops and you don't get the care that you're accustomed to in your artificial habitat. So you're going to have to go forward because you don't have natural habitat anymore, and because you are 8,000 million humans, which the world has never supported, ever before, 50 years ago. And I've done the math on other videos where I think the Earth right now in its current state can support maybe 80 million people, not 8,000 million, 80 million, which, if you care to do the math, is 1% of the current population. Typically, it would have been 200 million. 80 million isn't that far away from 200 million. We are going forward. And there's a very real risk, easily calculated, easily justified, where in the absence of fossil fuels, which will happen when the global economy collapses, when the global economy collapses, whether it's because of the price and availability of fossil fuels or because of the predation of AI devouring our jobs and kicking us all out of the global economy. When the global economy collapses, the oil collapses. And in the absence of oil, how does any of this, including the 18-wheelers pulling into your local market at 2 o'clock in the morning to disgorge the food onto the shelves, how does any of that take place after the collapse of the global economy? And the answer is, for the most part, it does not. It just does not. Now, maybe the governments can come along and say, okay, we get it, 80% unemployment. That does sound bad. And so maybe the role of government is no longer to mediate the bargaining between workers and corporations and trying to balance inflation and wages and all that, in the Federal Reserve Bank trying to figure it out. Maybe that's not our role anymore. Maybe our role is just to get the food onto the shelves. Maybe that's our role now. Okay, that's not very interesting, but hey, if that's the work of the moment, well, then let's figure that out. And the governments could say that. The governments could come along and say, hey, our job now is get the food on the shelves. That's it. We're back to the first level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, clothing, shelter. And let's get the food, clothing, and shelter where they need to be. And if we need to do something different with food, we'll figure that out. And if we need to do something different with clothing, we'll figure that out. And if we need to do something different with housing and shelter, well, we got to figure that out too. That's a lot of figuring. And we're crap at figuring because we're politicians and we're basically lazy and stupid and fearful. And once we get into office, the fear sets in. I might do something. I might fuck up. Oh God, I might say something to offend a group or several groups, or I might propose some legislation that's worded weirdly, and my staff, torpedoes my career on purpose, and I can't do it. I can't propose any legislation. I can't get behind any difficult projects. I can't be the one out front. I don't want to take a stand. I can't say anything. Yes, well, of course, yeah. Well, we are looking at this, and we will make sure that the right people are aware of the situation and take the necessary steps to evaluate the situation. And if it turns out that there really is a problem, then of course we will make the American people, the peoples of the world, naturally, and that's not just Americans, of course, but American people, of course, start with, we'll make them aware. And if there really is a problem, we have a task as the political class to prepare people for problems, but right now we don't see a problem. Any questions? See, that's how they do it, right? That's how they do it. That's how they babble without saying anything. without promising anything, without recognizing anything as a problem, without promising to do anything about the problem that they're not recognizing, right? That's how they do it. A task force. Yes, we'll create a committee. We're going to look into this, and we're going to very quietly convene the committee, and then we're going to, shuffle some papers around, and then get rid of the committee with a one paragraph finding. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say all that out loud? Okay, yeah. If you forget you heard that, all right. That's how they do it. That's how they do it. So, are they going to help us? Are they going to help us with the food, clothing, and shelter when either global heating terminates those things with the termination of fossil fuels, or when AI terminates those things when it terminates your job, which is the only way you're able to participate in this global economy, all this, right? All this up here, way beyond your pay grade, right? All this is happening in smoke filled rooms and making you have a life. When you can't do all this anymore because you just lost your job to AI, and every conceivable job you could do has also been lost at the same time to AI. Every industry you could possibly participate in has now been imploded, and you don't get the token. And now you're what? How are you going to pay your mortgage, right? Okay, the government can help us with this. And people say, "Oh, I see where you're headed with this. Now we know what your agenda is. You're like a communist, right? Right? You're a communist. You're gonna take all the forms of production and you're gonna give it to the government, and they're gonna have 5-year plans like fucking Soviet Union, which imploded, by the way. And you're just gonna have all these isms and your communisms and your socialisms and your trade unions, and you're gonna, the government's gonna figure it out. The government's gonna do it all. The government's gonna do all the planning and all the innovation and all the inventing and all the patents, right? The government's gonna do it. That's what you're gonna say. You're gonna say the government's communism with a capital C. The governments are going to do it. No, I'm not saying that at all. The governments are completely fucked. For this level of work, the governments are completely useless, absolutely useless. You might as well ask a 2-year-old to address these problems. The governments are completely autistic. They could help us, but they're not going to. You're going to have to help yourself. And it's called village life. Village life. You need to find, and you can do this, and you can start doing this tomorrow. You need to find, use any excuse you want to, you need to find 50 or 100 people that you think you can work with. This works better if those same people are also looking for 50 or 100 people that they can work with. And why would you be doing that? That's not your modern life. We've been trained through corporate propaganda that what you want, you're not sure what you want, right? You're 10 years old. You're not sure what's important. Here's what's important: a job, a nice paying job. And because you need to participate in the consumer economy, and you need bigger and better and faster and cheaper. That's what you want. That's what you need. And that's what you're going to go to the wall to fight for. And you're going to elect the politician that promises you better and faster and cheaper. Okay? That's what you want. I know you're only 10 years old, but it's never too soon to start. Okay? And by the time you're 17, 18, and you're looking at buying your first car, how fast is it? How good looking is it? I don't care what the features are. Is it the right color? How fast does it go? How much horsepower does it have? Give me some numbers. What's the top speed? Right? That's what you are when you're 17 or 18. And these people, because that's all they were ever taught, end up wrapping themselves in their car around, oak trees. Because what they didn't want, what they never thought they would have to think about, although they probably did think about it in the last half a second of their life, that what they wanted was to live. That's what they wanted. I mean, they didn't know that. They didn't realize that on an intellectual front of brain, moment, that what they wanted was to live. They wanted to have a life. Maybe even a nice life. That would be nice. A nice life. That sounds good. A nice life. Yeah. Friends, rituals, family get-togethers, marriage, kids. Yeah, that'd be good. But when they're speeding down the boulevard at 120 miles an hour in their brand new Camaro, yeah, look at me. I got a big dick. I'm driving 120 miles an hour. And then there's an oak tree. And in the last half second of that brief moment of thrill, they were thinking, oh, yeah, that's right. This is kind of stupid. Why am I doing this? If I survive this, I swear to God, and that's all they get. They don't even get through their promise to God of what they will do differently. They get a second chance. What they needed was village life. They didn't need 400 horsepower or 800. I guess that's what's the market on the market now. They didn't need 800 horsepower, but they didn't need 140 miles an hour. It's terrifying people on the streets. They didn't need power. They didn't need glory or vanity. What they needed was village life. They need to be part of something, to have a life, to know that you have a purpose. So what does village life look like as we go forward? Well, it looks like all of this on a smaller scale. And that should be what you want. Now, you don't want that today. And you can't imagine ever wanting that. But when your Titanic sinks, I want you to remember that what you want is to live. And the way you live is in connection with others. And the life you have is shared. It's shared with your parents, it's shared with your siblings, it's shared with the people you went to high school with. But really, that's just a small sliver of a person's life. It's the life of a child. But when you're an adult, you still need that. You still need the people around you, the people you work with, the master carpenter under which you learned your craft. And then when you're the master, well, then you have your own students, right? And that gives you meaning. And people come to you. They want your products. They want your advice. You become a leader in the community because you've got wisdom about how the community works. Not because you have money, not because you have an 800 horsepower Camaro. You become a leader in your community because of your wisdom. And your wisdom is shared. You got it from someone who was older than you, who passed wisdom down to you, and you updated that wisdom and made it alive and made it vital. And then you became the leader, and there was more wisdom in you than there was in your master. And then you and your master together in your head go forward, and then you pass on the wisdom to the students, and they will in turn massage it and update it for current situations. And that's village life. Now, your village has to be self-contained. That's how villages are. And if you go into Europe and you find some village in some valley somewhere on the Rhine River or wherever up in the Alps, they're going to be, there's going to be at least the vestiges of how they survived up there. Because if they've been up there for 300-400 years, well, that predates cars and 18-wheelers and Costco, right? So how did they do that? Well, there's the fields and pastures. There's some sheep and cattle running on them, and if you go through the village, well, this bed and breakfast that used to be the blacksmith, and this health spa over here, well, that used to be the old mill. Look, you can still see the hole in the wall where the mill used to go out to the river, and where the axle for the mill went out to the river. And the river's gone because we've drained everything and it's all underground now in conduits. But there used to be a river that ran down through here. You can still see black and white pictures of it from back before the Second World War. And it's all there. It's all kind of there. The village life is all kind of there, including the layout of the fields. And well, that's where they grew the wheat and the barley, and that's where they grazed the oxen that would pull the plows to work the fields, and that's where they had the dairy, and they had milk and cheese. In fact, they had a really important cheese festival. Used to have before the 1950s. They had a really important cheese export, and they'd have a festival every year, and they would celebrate the cheeses, and people would come from all around the country to enjoy the cheese festival. And we had all kinds of important things that we would export. In fact, the blacksmith who worked for the village and repaired things and shoed the horses and whatnot, he actually made parts for automobiles when they were still handmade. In this other city over here, he would make parts for the automobiles. He would pour cast iron gears and things, and they would ship them off. And we didn't even, people back then didn't even know what an automobile was until one of them finally came into the village and said, "This is what you've been contributing to all this time." And people were amazed. And you look at the old newspapers from, 1921 when that first automobile showed up, and people were like, "Wow, what is this? It's a horseless carriage. I can't believe it. Look at this. This is amazing. We helped build this. Well, isn't that something?" And they just didn't know. They had their village life. And that's what you're going to have to reinvent. Now, our village life is going to hopefully contain as much of our current technology as possible. What is that? It's a lot of stuff that's simply invisible to most people, most Americans, almost everybody who can get on a video like this and hear me speak doesn't even know how that works, the internet. They don't know how the video works. They know it's YouTube, and you have to have a camera or something. And how does any of that work? Okay, they just won't know. Yeah, kids might, but kids don't use personal computers anymore, and they don't use the internet anymore either. I do. I did. Right. I was an internet engineer. I was a network engineer, and I wrote applications that ran on the internet. I booted up web servers all the time and configured them to offer pages on request. That was my career. I did that, and I stopped eventually, but I know how to do that. I know where all that comes from. Again, it's a system that I understand. I understand the emergent properties of that system. I want that to go forward. I know how complicated that's going to be. That is a role for government to make sure that works. So people say, well, we're going to need in the era of 80% unemployment, and people just scrambling to find bread, we're going to need UBI, universal basic income. Oh, that's communism. Oh, good Lord. Where is Charlie McCarthy when we need him, right? And socialism right here in America. You're just going to give away money and people just use the money for whatever they want. I just can't believe it. We've fallen so far. I just can't believe it. Socialism, communism with a big C, capital C communism. I just can't believe it. Next, they'll be coming for my liberties. My guns, my freedom to walk them down the sidewalk, to associate with who I want. They're just going to take it all away. Capital C communism, UBI. I just can't believe it. Well, if you have 80% unemployment and you want to maintain your global economy, and if you're not going to come up with something else for people to, food, clothing, shelter, there you go. 3 little monkeys. If you can't meet these needs, well, then you die, right? And do people want to die? No. Talk about storming the Capitol. When people start to realize that they don't have the food, clothing, shelter, and there's no jobs, and everyone's unemployed, not just them, but everybody, and there is no plan B, and there's nowhere else to go because it's happening globally, and you can't go to another country, you can't go to another state, it's just everywhere all at once. Oh, and by the way, the best paying positions went first, so what's left, I'll go be a Walmart greeter. Oh no, that's a robot. That's a humanoid robot. We don't need to, and there's no customers in Walmart. There's a nice humanoid robot greeter that for 6 or 8 months did a great job greeting people as they came into Walmart. And now there's nobody coming into Walmart, and Walmarts are going out of business. Stock is plunged, the stores are closing, the inventory is being sold off, and all that's going to be left is the humanoid robot with nobody to greet. So everyone's unemployed. And what are you going to do for money? I had to have money. What about my mortgage? What about my car payment? What about my electric bill? I mean, come on, all of this high level technological stuff, all this modern life, and 18-wheelers pulling into Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and Costco with, billions of tons of food on the shelves. And I got no money. Now what? All right. Well, UBI, universal basic income. Oh, that's communism with a capital C. I just can't believe it. What has America come to? Capital C communism. I can't believe it. All right, so forget UBI. There's another project that people are talking about, and this is really recent. I don't even know when this started, but given that giving away money is communism, God save us. Okay, given that that's not allowed, they're talking about universal basic services, UBS. Okay, what is UBS? Universal basic services. Yeah, services. I mean, that's really what I need, right? I need an electric service. I need a sewer service. I need a water service for my home. And, someone's got to provide that. I don't know who. They got to provide that. It comes to my house right now. I pay them quarterly or monthly for the service, and I don't have money now, but it's got to come. These are basic services. Come on. Without, food, clothing, shelter, and electricity, water, and sewer treatment without basic services and basic, goods, we're all just cavemen, right? We're just going to all be living on the streets, homeless in tents, I guess. And where the tent's going to come from, I don't know. I guess we'll be stealing each other's tents. That's our future now. We're just going to be, living in caves. Except that we have universal basic services. I can't pay for my electricity, but I need electricity. Okay, here's your electricity. What is that? That's a basic service. It's delivered to your home. Well, who's going to pay for that? Well, right now, we have utility companies. They need to make a profit. They need your money. But what if we nationalize the utility companies and they're run by the government? Well, how are you going to pay the employees? Oh, didn't you know there aren't any employees at the utility company? Well, how can that be true? It's all run by machines. It's all run by robots. Artificial intelligence does everything. And if something needs to be fixed, they send a person out to fix it. And that person gets paid for the day. And then they go back home. And they don't get paid anymore. They don't have a salary. They don't have a job. They have work. Not the same thing. They have a task. Not the same thing as having a job. And they get a little bit of money for that. Or maybe they do it because we all want the services. Maybe that's the military, the police provide defense. They don't send you a bill after that. Why do the police defend you in your home and not send you a bill? Because it's a basic service. Why does the fire department come and put out the fire in your attic? Who knows how that got started? And they don't send you a bill for that. Why? Because it's a universal basic service. Fire prevention, by the way, didn't used to be a universal basic service. The first fire departments were created by insurance companies who would direct the volunteer fire department to put out fires on houses that the insurance companies insured. And after the first, the second or third time that the firemen didn't show up to a house fire, and people said, "Hey, you put out the fire on that house across the street, and you didn't put out the fire on my house. What's the difference?" Well, you're not insured by the same people that house was insured by, and I worked for the insurance company. After that happened a couple of times, people said, "Well, fuck that. We can't let the insurance companies run the fire departments, just to reduce their risk and their payouts. Instead, let's just have that be a universal basic service." That was the answer. I'm sure the police had the same history. If you look at the history of police forces, how far back do you go before those are just thugs who just got hired by somebody to protect themselves, or alternatively, go beat somebody else up and because they're working for a guy, he wants that person's stuff. Go beat that guy up and take his stuff and bring it to me. That was your police, right? And very quickly, communities fall back to that when things don't go well. The rule of the strong man, and he has his police, and they work for him, and whatever he wants, he takes. Well, how about just universal basic first responders? That could be a service. How about electricity? How about sewer treatment? How about water delivery to your home? Could be that way, right? And once we agree on an approach to 80% unemployment, whether it's UBI, and maybe it's UBI as a transition strategy, right, to basic services, which are offered by the governments. How do they pay for that? I don't know. They got to figure that out. If they're nationalized, then they simply have to have people who can do the work of maintaining these things. And that's really all that's necessary right now. We have a lot of this stuff around. If we can maintain most of it most of the time, then we should be fine. And you just have a few people who just do emergency work on the basic services, and eventually they fail, but it's a bridge to another way of life where you are more self-sufficient. And if your water deliveries from some central water reservoir start to become flaky, then what you do is you dig a well. Now, a well is a community resource. What is that community? So far, you've been living in your single family home with your single family. Maybe you've got some elders living with you now because, the old folks home closed down because there was no money. So they closed down the old folks home, sent all the old folks out, and the old folks that didn't have a place to go, it just died in the street. That's just capitalism. So toughen up, buttercup. But the ones that went home are now living with you. So you've got yourself, you've got your elders, your kids are home all the time because the daycare center closed and the school's closed because no one was paying the teacher. And the teachers, they like teaching, but without food, clothing, and shelter being handled, I'm a teacher. I can't afford to spend time in a school teaching other people's children when my children are hungry. I'm going home. Bye. So there's no school. The teachers went home. But what are all these people doing? They're not working, right? They're trying to survive. And what happens when people find themselves struggling to survive, struggling to figure that out? Well, they come together, as I mentioned in my last video, right? They come together. The siren song of capitalism and consumerism is fall apart. And then you have to buy a dishwasher, and 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 we sold 5 or 10 times more dishwashers than we would have if you were together sharing an automatic dishwasher, right? Everybody has to do it on their own. And look at all the sales I can do, right? Well, when you come together, you can now share resources. And if every home has a dishwasher in it, you take some of those dishwashers and you idle them, then you've got dishwashers for 30 years if you share the ones that you're using. And when one of them goes out, you replace it with another. When that one quits, you replace it with another. And your whole community can provide automatic dishwashers. And when the time comes to dig a well, then your community, like communities of old, all the way back to Mesopotamia and the Egyptians and further back, you will collect yourselves around the well, the community resource. And when it comes time to plant wheat, then your housing, your communities need to be near the fields, because the people will go out into the fields every day, work the fields, plant the wheat, manage the weeds, whatever, and then they'll come back home, and then they'll go back out and they'll come back home. It's like breathing in and breathing out. And then when the harvest comes in, they'll share all that. They'll share those resources. They have to, because you can't just go to Whole Foods and buy finished goods off the shelf. And what do you do with the wheat? Well, you grind it into flour. So there needs to be a mill in your community. Your community needs a mill. What's a mill look like? Well, it's like this and that. How do you power it? Well, if we have electricity as a universal basic service, you could power your mill with electricity, an electric motor. It could work really well. And maybe there's even light industry. In every country has its own light industries that makes these portable mills. And the government says, all right, make mills for grain. And then we're going to distribute these out to the communities. And how do we know where the communities are? Because they exist, and they've informed us that they're a community. They've got 100 people, 200 people. Now they justify their own mill. Before that, they had to get milled grain from somebody who had a mill. Who is that? Maybe that's the government. Maybe the government runs a centralized mill and they mill the wheat. And when your community has so many people and you need so much wheat, flour, and so the government delivers the flour. That's their responsibility. And eventually, when you have enough people and you have wheat fields of your own, then maybe instead of getting finished flour products from the government, you get a mill. You got wheat. Yeah, we see that. You've got a lot. I'll tell you what, instead of sending your wheat in to the central processing facility and getting back flour and all of that back and forth, then why don't you just leave your wheat here in your village, and we'll bring your village, a flour mill, a big one, big industrial thing. How are you going to power it? Well, we have universal basic services, so you still have electricity. But hey, you're a big enough group of people. Maybe you should get your own solar farm and maybe a couple of windmills. That'd be nice. And then you're a little more self-sufficient. And heavens forbids that the centralized grid goes down, either temporarily or possibly, can't rule out forever. Well, then you've got some capabilities because you are a big enough group of people working together that you kind of constituted a kind of lifeboat. So we're going to make sure that your lifeboat can survive. And good for you that you figured it out. You got your people together. You recognized what you needed. You pulled your resources. You worked with the government. You helped the government understand what they could provide for you. You gave the government meaning, a new meaning. It's not the same as the old meaning, but they had purpose now. They got meaning and purpose. And so the government is justified again. Well, that's important to them, right? And so the power structures are maintained for a while. They justify their existence and their hegemony for a while. And, your village slowly builds itself up. And there's that transition from everybody had a job every morning. Everybody went willy-nilly 8 different directions on the compass. And at the evening, they all came back willy-nilly back to their single family homes. There was that. Okay. There was not, it was necessary because we had an economic system that required everybody to have the little token. Do you have your token today? You had to you had to pay it across the bridge, and you had to pay to put fuel in your car, and you had to pay your car payment, and you had to do all that before you could even get the token. And then once you had the token, you needed your car and your gas and your tokens and everything else to go to some distant place to get your food, right? And then you came back to your home, and then you had your token, and you could buy the electricity, buy the water, and you could buy the everything else that you need, your basic needs, and you could make your food, you could make your bread, you could, whatever, heat your house. Well, that's done because nobody has a job, right? Nobody has a job. What is it? What are the five horsemen of the apocalypse? No driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no movement of money, and no jobs. Okay. There you go. That's the story. And so, you figured it out. Maybe you saw it coming. Maybe you had enough money that you could, ignore it coming, but you had enough money that you could very quickly cobble something together with your neighbors. And fortunately, wow, how'd this happen? I didn't even know that some of my neighbors were kind of knew this was coming, knew that the combination of global heating and AI was going to nuke us essentially, and unavoidable. And we're kind of glad that those people were doing what they were doing, because they really helped a lot, and they became the first set of elders who would help direct people in their thinking. And by golly, because we kind of had a narrative about what we can do together, how we could come together to do this, okay, as people do during disasters, they come together, right? They share resources. Because we had a narrative about how we could come together, we probably avoided 50% suicide rates to go along with the 80% unemployment, right? And now we're building a village, and we've convinced certain government departments to support us, and they've established fields. The governments have established the government. Our local government, our city government, our county government has a Department of Agriculture again. Right here in this city, right here in the mayor's office, there's a Department of Agriculture, and they're really working. They've actually used bulldozers to knock down the old malls that now don't have anybody in them, right? 80% unemployment, right? Nobody has a job, no one has money, there's no goods flowing from a broken economy, right? So they sent the bulldozers out there, and they knocked down those buildings and tore up those parking lots, and they bulldozed that shit off to one side towards the sea, which I didn't really understand why they would bulldoze it towards the sea, but it turns out sea level rise is now a thing. So they're building seawalls along the edge of the communities by just bulldozing whole sectors of abandoned housing and retail, just bulldozing it towards the sea and building seawalls. And so behind those seawalls, they're now making farms. And the government did this, and they're using fossil fuels to run the tractors and the harvesting equipment. But I've seen experiments where they're using electrified tractors, and they're not even using batteries. They're like the old trolley buses that had the pantograph on the top, and there was a wire that went overhead, and the bus would go up and down the street on the wire, and it was electric. And so now they got these farms. You should see it. There's all these wires overhead, and you're like, what's going on here? But the tractors go up and down the fields, and they've always got a pantograph on that wire, and they're pulling electricity from it. It's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. Never thought I'd live to see that, but look, they're doing it. They've got it figured out, and they're going to push this out to other communities. And the government is doing that because they have to meet basic needs, or people are going to die. And so they're doing that. They figured it out. They had to figure it out. So they got all their technologists and all their eggheads and all their pinheads. They got all these autistic people together, and they figured out how to electrify a tractor. It wasn't even that hard. Yeah, now there's wires overhead in the fields, but so what? Who cares? I mean, they're able to run tractors, and they're able to plant and harvest food, and it's modern agriculture, but it's electrically powered. It's modern agriculture. It's got the whole thing going on. And the food that's being harvested, it's shared in the community, and every group of 200 people who live in a village, they automatically get, they're part of that harvest, and it's working out. It's not too bad. And the government will come once you're established as a village, and you've got a certain number of homes that are in an area, and you've decided to work together, and you've proven that you can do that. Well, then they'll come and they'll drill a well for you right in the middle of your community, an old-fashioned well. They drill a deep well, and they'd give you pumping equipment. And because it's the pumps are electric, then you have to have solar panels. And so they have the solar panels and some sort of a backup, and you can pump water. You pump the water into a tank, which they also brought. Pump the water into a tank, and you have gravity feed, and it goes right into your existing plumbing system. The government did that. Why did they do that? I don't know. We didn't pay for it. I guess it's just the end of the world as we know it. And so they had to do it. So they did it. It's the end of the world. I guess it's done. I guess it's gone. I didn't notice. Did you notice? Were you watching? I wasn't watching. I was too busy. And look at all these apples we got this year. We had a bumper crop of apples. I think it's because we're using recycled water, and there's nutrients in the water. I wouldn't want to drink it, but hey, it works great. And somebody else, they built an outhouse. They dug a hole in the ground and they put it right between two fruit trees. And I swear those fruit trees went nuts this year. They went crazy. And they say it's because of that outhouse sitting between those two trees. Who would have thought of that? My goodness. Oh, and we're less dependent on sewage treatment. And maybe we should just do this everywhere. Everyone uses an outhouse. So let's go poop and pee in the outhouse because the trees just go crazy. And there's all this fruit, and we have apples and oranges and lemons and pomegranates. It's just crazy abundant food. And we decided to do that. We decided to put outhouses everywhere. And if you're, not home and you don't really have access to something, use the outhouse. Actually, it's a huge benefit. Just use the outhouse. And I know it's not modern, but hey, it's the world has ended. We're making a new one, and we're doing it deliberately. And someone figured out that an outhouse under a couple or a few fruit trees makes amazing harvests. So let's just do that. That's a deliberate thought. Let's do that. And our 200 people, our 500 people in our village, everybody's busy. There's no driving or flying, or there's no jobs, and there's no money. And yet, here we are. We're building a village. Wow. We did that. We did that. We did that. How did we do that? Well, sit down here. I'll tell you the story. Let me tell you how we did that. Gather around, children. This is your story too. We can do this. The governments can help us. Will they? They're not used to that, are they? The governments are not used to that. Oh, and that's communism with capital C. That's capital C, communism. The government's harvesting food and sending it out to the people. And, people won't work. People don't work. They don't have purpose. People who don't work, they buy AR-15s and they go shoot up schools and things. People have to have purpose. And purpose means work. It means work. And you gain value in your life and your self-esteem through work, right? And where are the jobs? There's no jobs. We all just kill ourselves then. If I don't have a job and I can't drive my 800 horsepower Camaro to work, then just kill me. You kill me now. I don't, this communism with a capital C communism. This is no. Well, we can't do that. Are we going to fall that far? Really? That the role of the government is to provide basic services? Oh, unthinkable. I mean, we didn't fight the Iraq war for capital C communism. And here we are. Here we are talking about the government providing basic services. I just can't believe it. And now they're going to have government fields, and they're going to tear down a mall and bulldoze it. They're going to bulldoze a perfectly nice mall. I actually used to shop there. They're going to tear up the asphalt. Like we'll never have cars again. They're just going to tear up the asphalt, and they're going to do what? They're going to plant crops, like a bunch of communists. Capital C communism. That's what I'm calling it. It's a conspiracy. It was always a conspiracy. It was always a dark conspiracy by the Illuminatis to, crash us and make us so we don't have any jobs and 80% unemployment. And they're just trying to break us, take our freedoms away, and my AR-15 out of my cold dead hand. And it's capital C communism. It's taken over. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. I saw it happen. I still don't believe it. The government is providing basic services. Electricity, water, basic foods. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Where is my capitalism? Where's my consumerism? Where's my 800 horsepower Camaro, right? I remember buying gas, $15 a gallon, and then I couldn't buy that anymore. I couldn't afford it because I just lost my job. And I want those days back. How am I going to get that back? Who do I have to string up from an oak tree to get that back? Who's responsible for this? Whose fault is this? Well, okay, I guess you go live up in the hills with your dog and your truck, and you good luck up there, you and Ted Kaczynski, I suppose. The rest of us are going to be busy reinventing, formulating deliberately, with malice aforethought, village life. And yeah, you want universal basic services. We want water or a well, and we want sewer treatment or outhouses that are doing double duty, and we want internet, and that kind of has to be universal because connecting to the house next door doesn't do you much good. Although I can imagine that being good for something. Instead, we need a global internet, and that's how we educate our children now. And yes, we have AI agents that, talk to the little children and teach them how to read and write, and they do a good job. And there's even a pair of robotic hands, and that's all they are is hands, just hands attached to a machine that shows the children how to practice their handwriting and how to model with clay. And the children don't even know it's not a human. It's the hands that they watch. They watch the hands. Oh, that sounds terrible. That sounds like capital C communism. No, it's not. We're just entertaining the children, giving them some motor things to do. Keep your hands busy. And we have a pair of robotic hands. And when there's an adult who's available, they go in there and they sit with the children. Maybe they eat lunch with the children. They read them a story. And otherwise, we have a great AI, stand-in for that. And they watch the children with cameras and make sure the children are healthy and happy and that they can go out and play, and then they come back, and then you have a great little one-room schoolhouse. And after about age 5 or 6, they get tired of it. But when they're little, they just love it. They just absolutely love it. And I don't know who invented the robotic hands that works with the children, playing with the clay and learning handwriting. And I don't know where that AI come from, the AI teacher, but I've seen it. And you can pick different avatars anytime you want. Are they patient, very knowledgeable, answer the children's questions, challenge them with questions and tasks, and help them work together. And I don't think that any educational system was ever as good as this. It's just completely humane, and the children thrive. And when they don't want to do it, they don't have to. And most of the time they do, because all the other our children are there and they're all modeling that behavior. And the adults come in and participate and praise the children for their progress and ask them how they're doing and ask them what they learned. And isn't that what it's about? It doesn't matter that it's an AI. And we have AIs that run the tractors out in the field. There's no human out there. That's an electric tractor. Did you know that? And it has GPS. And the governments are maintaining the GPS satellites, and it's got GPS, and it's got an AI that runs that tractor, and it goes up and down those rows day and night doing something. I've even sat out there. I've sat out there one day, watched it all day, and sometimes it's just pulling weeds. It's the damnedest thing. It just pulls weeds. And I don't think they use fertilizers anymore either, or pesticides of any kind. It just goes up and down those roads pulling weeds. You can't even see the weeds, they're so small. And yet that's what it's doing. It's completely silent. It's the damnedest thing. Why did it take so long? And that food goes to the villages. And I'm in one of those villages. And my father helped create that. And I inherited from him the skills that it takes to live in a village. And we're breeding cattle, and we have dairy now, and we make cheese, and we have a cheese festival. The other villages come to our village for the cheese. We just give it away, and they give us stuff. There's a town a little ways down the road where they make wine. And they bring some wine. We send them back with some cheese, and they get to have wine and cheese, and we get to have wine and cheese. And we're really happy when they show up with the wine. And there's another that shows up with the olives and the olive oils. And there's another that, they're processing wood, and they come in with lumber. I don't know where they get the logs, but it doesn't matter. They're making lumber, and they come in here with lumber, and they leave with wine and cheese. And we got the wine from the other village over there, but we need the lumber, and we give them some wine and cheese, and they stay and they have a dinner with us, and then they go back. Oh, you know what? They got 4 big draft horses that pull that wagon, and the wheels on that wagon, our blacksmith made the wheels for that wagon. Can you imagine that? Our own blacksmith, he's right over there. He's a really smart guy. He made the wheels for that wagon. And now that wagon comes into our village with those 4 beautiful horses. They don't need to use horses. There are now electric pullers that can pull a wagon that size, and they could use the electric puller, and it even has its own AI. They don't have to even be on the wagon. They can just tell the puller machine to take the wagon to the next village over, and then turn around and come back. They don't even have to be on the wagon. And they got those 4 beautiful draft animals, and they're so well cared for. I just love seeing them come into town. When we know they're coming, that they called ahead on the cell phone, and the children rush out. Even the little ones, they leave their modeling clay behind, and they go rush out and watch those horses come in. And the wheels on that wagon were made by our local blacksmith with his apprentices. And those wheels are beautiful. And those animals are gorgeous. We love listening to them clop, clop, clop through town. And the children feed them, and they pet them, and they sit on them. It's the highlight of the month. Absolutely, hands down, the highlight of the month. Village life. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go out and pull some weeds. It's just because I want to be with the plants. I just want to be out there in the rows. I just want to see them. I want to smell them. I'm going to pull weeds while I'm out there. And I'm just going to walk down those rows. I'm going to let my hand run over the leaves. I'm going to look at those fruits. And I'm going to say, yeah, these tomatoes, that's going to be pasta. And look at these chilies. Oh, man, I got 100 uses for those. We got to preserve some of these tomatoes. And how are we going to do that? We need more pressure cookers and more mason jars. We're going to have a huge harvest of tomatoes. We need to bring our food processing game, okay? And if we get enough, if you have enough of a harvest here, and we jar up enough tomatoes, we could make tomato sauce. We could become a provider for tomato sauce. And if we had cheese and tomato sauce, we could get more wine from those guys, because they've been complaining about not having enough tomatoes. They're doing great with their grapevines, but they don't have enough tomatoes. So we're going to raise Roma tomatoes. Look at this harvest. And we're going to can these things up, and they're going to use that. And pretty soon, with the wheat that we're getting from the government and the little field of wheat we have over here, we'll make our own pasta. And then, you can have pasta meals with wine and olives and olive oil. And it's just all there. It's just all there. We didn't have to go back to caves. It's all there. It's still there. We've got our own water and our own electricity, and we get a few goods from other villages, and we're proud of what we produce. And everyone is involved in harvesting tomatoes and canning the tomatoes and getting all this ready. Everybody's involved. And then the horses come into town, and we just stop what we're doing. We just enjoy these animals, enjoy that wagon, and get that lumber off of there. We give it to the carpenters, and the blacksmith and the carpenters make more wheels, and we're going to sell those for cash. And it's all here. It all happened. It's all working. It's like a well-oiled machine, just the gears turning all the time. And some of those gears are robots, and some of those gears are artificial intelligence, and some of those gears are the internet, and some of those gears are just people gearing together. They came together. We can't even remember a time when we were all separate and living our separate miserable lives and chasing money and chasing jobs and losing jobs and committing suicide and going to the school with an AR-15 and killing all the people we can because we're so depressed. Okay? We don't do that. And hardly anyone can remember those times. Now look what we're doing. Look what we have done. Look what we have created. The world died. The world as we knew it ended. Now look at it. Look at this new thing. We did this. We did this. We can come together proud of what we have done. And everyone has a role, and everyone has a purpose. And even if you're old, you still have a purpose. And even if you're a tiny child, you still have a purpose. You have a future as well. And the old have their past, and they share their past with us, and they prepare us for the future in so doing. And everyone has a purpose, and everyone has a place, and everyone is respected. Everyone is needed. Even the voices of the old, even the little questions of the tinies. Why is the sky blue? You're lucky. You get that question. You got that question. That question comes up all the time. It's like the first question any child asks an adult. Why is the sky blue? That's our purpose. Village life. That's your lifeboat. When your Titanic hits all the icebergs all at once, that's what you're going to be craving. And you think you need a job, and you think you need a money, and you think you need an 800 horsepower Camaro, and you think you need Disneyland. You don't you don't need any of those things. You don't need those things. What you need, what you crave, what doesn't exist is village life. Village life. Doing for yourself, doing for others. That's a new one for you, isn't it? Oh, you haven't heard that one in a while. Actually, you've never heard that in your entire fucking life, doing for others. You've never heard that. And if it is doing for others, there's some sort of strings attached. Oh, you must accept Jesus as your personal savior. Now I'll do for you. Oh, you must allow us to come in and take your oil resources. Now we'll do for you. Oh, well, you must allow, internet and free cell phones for all your people so they can get on our social media and give us more views. Then we'll do for you. There's always strings attached. When have you ever done for yourself? And when have you ever done for your neighbors without strings attached, other than the usual? Like, I'm doing this for you because I love you. I respect you. I understand you. I need you. I may need you tomorrow, and I may need you today. I just need to know you're okay. I need to know you're okay. I need to know you're there, and I need to know what's happening in your life and that you're happy and you're okay. That's what I need. I need you to be okay. I need you to be okay. That's what I need. I don't need an 800 horsepower Camaro, and I don't need an AR-15, and I don't need to go into school and kill a bunch of people. What I need is to know that you are okay. Are you okay? Do you have what you need? Can I help you with anything? Well, I want to help you. Really, I want to know what you need, and anything I can help you with, I will, because next week I'm going to need something from you. And I don't have money, and you don't have money, and we can't pay each other for the services, but we're part of a community. I want you to be okay, and I want to be okay. And we're going to figure this out together. What is okay? What is okayishness? What is this elusive thing that now we're talking and thinking about all the time? Being okay. We didn't used to have these thoughts. Didn't care. Homelessness, mass murders, teenagers killing themselves in cars, teenagers killing themselves with drugs, gender dysphoria and drug addiction. And we never used to ask people if they were okay. Are you okay? I'm not sure you're okay. Are you okay? I want you to be okay. That's important to me. We didn't have those conversations. Nobody had those conversations. Look, there were strings attached. Hi, I'm from the Catholic Charities. I'm asking you if you're okay. Oh no, there's no strings attached. Hi, I'm from some government agency. I'm asking if you're okay. No, I don't have any agenda. Nothing at all. I just want to make sure you're okay. Yeah. That's how we used to do it. And now what we need to do starting today, because our Titanic is going to hit 2 icebergs next week. What we need to be doing today, right now, today. Start anytime you're comfortable. Today is not too soon. Ask people if they're okay. You okay? I'm just asking. I got no agenda. I just want to know if you're okay. Please, just give me an honest answer, because I'm not sure I'm okay. And I don't think I'm alone in that. And hey, you're not okay. I'm not okay. Maybe our problems are the same. And we go and we ask around. Here, come with me. Let's go over here. Let's ask this other guy. He looks like he's not okay. Ask him if he's okay. Yeah, it turns out he's not okay either. We just told him we're both not okay. And what about you? Are you okay? You're not okay? Yeah, I know. Maybe your problems are a little different than mine, but I think if we look at them fundamentally, they're probably all the same. Yeah, I'm not okay. I want off this boat. Do you want off this boat? Yeah, well, I think we need to change the way we live. And I think the good start is to recognize that we need each other, and that's not a flaw. That's not a flaw. Needing each other is not a flaw. That's not a character flaw. That's not weakness. And the solution to needing other people is not to jump in your Camaro, 800 horsepower Camaro, and go down screaming down the streets, leaving a cloud of blue smoke burning your tires, down the road, terrorizing everybody into looking at you and noticing you and giving you value because you're so fucking reckless and dangerous. That's not what you need. You get out of your Camaro, park it, let the dust collect, and go find people who are also like you, not okay. Because the not okay part, the being not okay, I'm not okay, is only going to get worse from here. And it is going to manifest itself in myriad ways. You're not going to have fossil fuels at some point, or you're not going to be able to afford them, which is essentially the same thing. And before that, and maybe even leading up to that, your AI is going to replace you, especially if you're a white collar worker, a knowledge worker, a technologist. They're the first to go. The first to go. And ironically, they are the people raising the alarm that AI is about to sink our ship for eight out of 10 people, 8 out of 10 jobs. Go sink your ship. You're not okay. And then when you people who actually are the white collar workers, the coders and the project managers and all these people who envisioned all this change and made all this change happen and then promulgated this change and knew there were going to be problems but didn't raise any issues because profits, and all these people who could deal with this and explain it to people and maybe come up with guidelines and regulations to keep it from harming people. Those people lost their jobs first. They got killed off first. And now they don't have money, and they got kicked out of their house, and their 800 horsepower Camaro is now parked in a storage yard somewhere collecting dust, and it's not working anymore. They were the first to go. Wow, how convenient that the ones who knew, who saw it coming, who could warn people, and maybe even tried to do so, they were the first ones thrown off the island. Isn't that interesting? Pretty interesting. You need to figure this out. And you need to figure it out now. You don't have much time. I don't have much time. But at least I'm aware that I don't have much time. You are not aware. You don't know how much time you have. And if you want my guess on when the shit's going to hit the fan, it's going to be next week. And that's optimistic, probably, because it's possible this shit has already hit the fan for both global heating and AI deployment involving job loss. Okay. That particular crisis may have already landed years ago. Certainly the global heating one has been in process for 100 years, and it got worse enough for people to start running around screaming about it. Here I am, 10 years ago. We may have already hit that particular iceberg. Our Titanic may already be sinking due to that. There's lots of people, myself included, that will give you a narrative, a quick set of bullet points. Okay, this and this and this, and therefore the end of the world as we know it. This, and therefore this, and that, and assume that, and the reasonable assumptions. And at the end of the list, the end of the world as we knew it. Wow, that's already landed, probably. And now the AI thing is coming. 80% unemployment, one estimate, leading to the collapse of the entire global economy, naturally. What else would happen? What else would you think would happen? And from that, 100% unemployment. Yeah, I mean, you go from 80 to 100 like overnight, pretty much. Well, 100 days, might as well be overnight. You're going to be completely gobsmacked by what happens. Completely overborne. You have no idea what hit you. Yeah, so that's in our future, but that could be next week. I'm not joking, not hyperbole. The AI takeover of our workspace could start next week if it hasn't already started. Next week. So that doesn't leave much time to start contemplating what comes after. That doesn't leave much time to start thinking about village life, because that's the only thing I've got, people. I don't even have bleak, dystopias. I don't think you get to have a bleak dystopia. I don't think you get to have, infinite road rage and zombie apocalypse, and you don't get, one nation invading another. I don't think you get to have any of that. Yeah, you can watch movies on all that, right? So you're thinking, well, that's what we're going to have. No, you're not going to get any of that stuff because that all requires fossil fuels. You're not going to get to have any of that. Okay, so in Mad Max, they were running around looking for gasoline, and they had their junky cars and car-based, Mad Max scenarios and Road Warrior scenarios. No, you're not going to get to have that. That's Hollywood. Hollywood does things with cars. Batman, right? Grand Theft Auto. Hollywood does things with cars because car culture. And more power is better. 800 horsepower is not enough, right? That's how Hollywood does things. Well, this is not going to be a Hollywood thing. I don't know what you're going to get, but it's not going to look like anything you've seen on Hollywood. It's going to look like village life. It's about as close as I get. It's going to be like learning how to cooperate, learning how to work together, getting your government to help you do that, getting your government to fill in for basic services, and having no money, and just having relationships and doing things for people because you want them to be okay. And you want them to want you to be okay. You want to think about them and you want them to think about you. And that's village life. That's village life. That's what villages were about. Knowing who you belong to, knowing where you live, knowing who these people are, not wanting to leave. Why would you leave? This is your home. This is your life. This is your meaning. This is your purpose. And these are the people that know you and love you and know you to the base of your soul, right? The village. And even if you're the village idiot, at least you're the village idiot. And you know that people will take care of you because you're the village idiot. You belong to the village. And they're not going to throw you outside the gate, throw you off the island just because you're the village idiot. Every village has its idiot. Anyway, we don't need more village idiots. We need more people who can think very clearly about the work that needs to be done. And that work needs to start next week. Next week. Because we're running out of time to figure this out. And whether you work on yourself or you work on your government or you work on your neighborhood, all of those things really need to happen because they all need to come together at once. For us to transition quickly to a sustainable, hyper-local way of life. Because that is the lifeboat. That is the getting off of this global Titanic. It becomes village life. And from there, just as the villages before us did, from there, 1,000 things will bloom. From village life, we rebuilt this whole thing into without fossil fuels and without wars and without nuclear weapons and without competition. We just rebuild this whole thing. And maybe we go to Mars if we want to. And if we don't want to go to Mars, if we've given up on things like that, and that was a silly idea to start with, then we don't go to Mars. We don't go to the moon. Or maybe somebody does. Maybe we hear about it later, but it's not important. Village life. That's your purpose. That gives you your meaning. And from there, who knows where we go? Let 1,000 villages bloom, I guess. I think that's a good goal. We need to get started on that next week.